One in Three is intended for mature audiences. Episodes contain explicit content and may be triggering as they often include violence and other varying forms of abuse such as emotional, psychological, sexual, and physical. In most cases, names have been changed to protect all involved. Please note, statements and opinions of guests do not necessarily reflect those of my own. Hi, warriors. Welcome to One in Three. I'm your host, Ingrid. We've heard some powerful stories of adversity on this podcast, but the one you're about to hear is layered in ways that almost defy belief. Now, let me be clear. This is not a comparison game. Trauma is trauma. Abuse is abuse. Never let anyone, including yourself, minimize your story. That being said, I do want to highlight the complexities in today's episode because they offer a space for validation, for compassion, and most importantly, a space where individuals can release the shame that survivors silently carry. Let me introduce you to Ali Allred. Like many of us, she was once a girl with big dreams, but life took her down a different path. One she would not wish on anyone. But that's the road she walked, with resilience and remarkable strength. Hi, Ali. I am super excited for you to come on today. You have an incredible, crazy story to tell and a lot of information regarding your advocacy as well. So we're going to break this up into 2 episodes. Episode 1's your story. Episode 2, we'll talk about your advocacy. But I am so appreciative of you coming on and taking the time today to go over all of this information.
Well, thank you so much for having me on today. It is an honor and a privilege. I really admire what you're doing. This podcast is incredible. Bringing awareness to the severity of the issues is imperative to making a change. And, you know, for me, personally, as Ali Allred, I never grew up thinking these things would happen to me. No one ever grows up thinking they're going to be a human trafficking, kidnapping, sexual assault, and domestic violence survivor. You know, as a kid, I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be a singer. I wanted to be all the things that I thought, were goals in my life and special and rainbows and butterflies, you know what I mean? But unfortunately, I was not dealt a great hand. I was born to a pretty young mother. She was only married to my father for about a year before they got divorced. And I lived in a pretty volatile home. I had a lot of love, but there was a lot of inconsistency and there was a lot of fighting between my family. We primarily lived with my grandparents since my mom was so young and she needed help with caretaking, and she was pretty absent the first 7 years of my life. Not intentionally, just, she did the best she could. And I, think that all the time, she was going to school, she was doing whatever she could, but I was primarily in my grandparents' care, and they got divorced after 48 years. So you can kind of imagine the volatility that happened there. And my mom and my grandma just butt heads. So, when they would get into fights, she would pick me up. We would move away to a friend's house until, resources ran out or money ran out. And then we would come back home, and it kind of just went like that. On top of that, when I turned 3, I started getting sexually assaulted by my father. I remember doing my first kind of sane kit with my mom, and she was digging through my private parts, and I asked her what she was doing. I was probably like 5 or 6, maybe 5 at the time. And she goes, I'm looking for worms. And like at the time, like I just knew that was not right. And she put me with hypnosis. Like I went under hypnosis. I went through the legal system. I did, went with social workers, all sorts of stuff. And ultimately, there was not enough evidence to hold him. So we just continued with life. My mom ended up getting remarried to my stepdad, and he legally adopted me because, my father obviously could care less about me, and he gave up his rights to me. He wasn't paying much child support, so it didn't really matter to him. Things were pretty good for a little bit in my life. I my dad had a construction company at the time. He was a builder, so we would move into spec homes and live there for a little bit and move around. So I moved around a lot, during my life, and especially in my childhood and my adult life. But, I didn't have a lot of stability. I was really excited when my mom got pregnant with my first sibling that I had prayed for. I was very excited. But, once my siblings started to be born, I kind of felt like it was their family and me, and the dynamic really changed for me. And I eventually, turned to drugs and alcohol as a kid. And I was about 16 when I started drinking, and it was really affecting every aspect of my life. I eventually ended up, being passed off to different family members. Because no one could keep custody of me. I went back to my grandparents' house. I remember, taking a knife away from one of them and using it as a talking stick on the couch. It was just like, now you talk, now you talk, now you talk kind of thing. And I was like 17 at the time. So my aunt in California was like, no, this isn't happening, and swooped in and, got custody of me. And, 2 weeks later, my uncle died of a heroin overdose. And I was just not in a good place. And I just started drinking and drugging even more. And I was probably 5'8" and 110 pounds. I had developed trichotillomania as a kid, which means that you rip out your own hair as a self-harm. It's kind of like biting your nails, an uncontrollable urge I still struggle with. I've slicked my hair up because I still stress out, because I still struggle with it. And, that goes to say that these things are, everlasting. Your childhood foundation really does lay a solid foundation of how it's going to affect your life. But it is in your control with how you react to things. But your hand you're dealt is not in your control, unfortunately. But I ended up going to boarding school, and that's how I graduated with a GED in Texas. After I graduated, I left the boarding school. I came back, moved in with my grandparents. They got divorced shortly after. I tried being Mormon as I was raised for a little bit because I felt that was the right thing, even though that wasn't what meshed with me. But I ended up, getting a college boyfriend. We weren't necessarily in a domestic, but it was very toxic. He was very mentally ill. And I didn't realize that I knew something was always different with me, but I hadn't gotten a diagnosis at that time. I was in my early 20s. When we had broken up, I checked myself inpatient to figure out what was going on, where I was diagnosed bipolar 1. And I started an outpatient therapy group for 6 months, where I met a group of 5 people, and then we became very close. One of them committed suicide, so the 4 of us became super, super close. I proceeded with my life. I went to aesthetic school. I worked as an esthetician for a doctor. I became a patient care coordinator. Eventually ended up leaving that job, became a medical rep. And in 2020, after I had got the great job, I had just adopted a dog, I had just got my Audi, my dream car, everything, I get a phone call. I'm drinking wine. It's a Saturday night. I'm watching Grey's Anatomy, not doing anything crazy, which is really weird for me because I was such a party girl at that time, for me to be home doing that. And so that was just so odd because, like, for me, like, I was doing mushrooms on a Tuesday, like, Molly on a Thursday. Like, I got an appendectomy from, and I got shipped from the T-Pain concert to the ER, and they couldn't even like operate on me because
Oh my God.
I was on Molly. My whole family showed up, and it was just like I was horrified. But I digress. So I get this call, and it's one of those people I had met in the therapy group, and he was an immigration lawyer. We were very close. I had, babysat his kids. Like, he had actually defended me on a rape case that I lost. So we were tight, and he was hysterical. I've never heard anyone hysterical like this in my whole entire life. And he said, "Can you come check on me?" And I said, "Well, I've been drinking. I can't come check on you, but You can call me an Uber, and I can come see how you're doing. I mean, I can't drive, but you can call me an Uber. And so I take an Uber over there, and I walk into the house, and there's a whole table full of guns, passports, multiple cell phones, IDs, and cash. My stomach just dropped. My heart just dropped to my stomach. I felt like I was going to throw up. And I went to leave. He grabbed me by the back of my hair, slammed me down, and I proceeded to get assaulted and beat, for what felt like days.
Was he
Um,
the only person in the house at the time, or were
yes,
there other people? Oh my
there
God.
was no one in the house. And he lived up in kind of the hills of, like, way kind of far out of the city in Utah. So, like, the neighbors weren't close. He had just built this house. Like, no one could hear me screaming. No one could hear me crying. And, like, he was in a psychosis, I believe, of some sort, because he kept calling me his ex-wife's name. Um, so I did what Oprah, suggested to do. And I humanized myself. I was like,
Oh,
you know
yeah.
me. We went to therapy together. I'm Allie. Like, I went, like, you're hurting me. You're hurting me. You're hurting me. Like, all this stuff. And eventually I was able to break away from him for a little bit. I ran upstairs, grabbed my phone. As he was coming after me, I knew I wasn't getting out. I pressed voice record real quick, because it was one of the top things. I was a singer songwriter. I play guitar and I sing. So it was one of the top things when I scrolled down one of my apps. So I went, boom, if I'm going to die, people are going to know how I die, right? Which is one of the things I brought to court, that, he got criminally charged, obviously, for. But anyway, I ended up escaping. I was hospitalized for my injuries short after. And 2 weeks after that, I tried to commit suicide. I'd take a whole bottle of Xanax, I'd take a whole bottle of Ambien, and I'd drink it down with a bottle of rum, or whatever I was drinking at the time. I think it was rum. And I get, sent to the hospital. They pink slipped me in Utah, is what they call it. So I had to go, not by choice. And once I was released from the hospital, I went right back to work. I was having debilitating breakdowns at work. Debilitating.
Did they
Right.
like mandate any kind of therapy or anything after that? Or they just like,
Well,
good luck to you, goodbye?
yeah. I mean, my boss, who, him and his wife, I'm still close with now. They're like a second family to me. Um, he essentially told me, Allie, look, you got to take a 6-month unpaid medical leave, or we got to put you on unemployment. And I was like, fuck. I was like, I got to go on unemployment. Which I never even filed for, because I started doing a ton of coke to stay awake, because this man claimed that he had ties with the cartel. Later finding out he's saying he's laundering money for the cartel, all this stuff, making all these threats. And these cars are following me, and detectives are texting me saying, do you recognize this car? Do you recognize this car? And I can't sleep at night. I'm doing a ton of cocaine with my upstairs neighbor just to stay awake, who was a dancer and taught me a lot of my moves later in life. And, I met my ex, who was our dealer. And he knew all about my situation. He knew all about me. He was from the East Coast. Like, he was tough. He was hard. He was a Nigerian ex-Marine, LA Crip, like, super tough guy, which made me feel super safe, because I felt like he was scarier than the person I was dealing with. You know what I mean? So when I was losing my apartment, he said, come move in with me. I'll take care of you. Like, it's going to be fine. I got you. 2 weeks into it, he's laying hands on me. Fast forward, I'm living in, like, the only sketchy part of Utah. I still have my dog at the time. Her name's Misha. I end up getting pistol whipped, raped, drowned in a bathtub with aspiration of fluid in my lungs. He chips my tooth. A plethora of things. I even eventually lost my child from a beating during that time. And, one of these times, like, I finally admitted I had a problem, and I called my family, like, after I lost my child, and I was like, I need to go to rehab. And so I went to rehab to get away from him primarily, but because of the Stockholm syndrome and the abuse and everything, I ended up AMing out of there and going straight back to him. I was only there 2 days before I was begging to come back. And, by the grace of whatever I believe in, they allowed me to come back. But then I asked if we could do couples therapy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did he let you go to rehab? Or did you have
Uh,
to like sneak out and go?
I wasn't living with him at the time because
Okay.
like this was one of the many times that I would pick up and leave and say, I'm done. I'm never going back. Da, da, da,
Mm-hmm.
da, da, da. So I was already out at that point. But he was actively trying to get me back. You know how it
Okay.
goes, like,
Yeah.
actively at that time. So he was happy to pick me up from rehab when I left early. He was delighted, and like he also was delighted when I left because he gets sick of me, like, you know what I mean, like he only wants me when I'm behaving and doing what he's wanting me to do, and the second I'm
Mm-hmm.
acting out of pocket, that's when he doesn't have any regard for me or my life. I actually had gotten a job after I lost my job as an IT rep. I was a sales and marketing director for an IT company. I sold BK Kenwood Motorola devices to cops and firefighters, and I would have to show up to conferences with handprints on my arm, which I mean, I was a heavy alcoholic at that time, doing a ton of cocaine too. And not only that, he had me dealing cocaine. He would leave me for days at a time, bagging up for him, and like it was a mess. But I eventually lost that IT job, and then when I went to rehab. Um, I actually still had that IT job until I had gotten out of rehab and, they let me go. But now, my old boss is totally supporting what I'm doing in my nonprofit. But it was a really, really scary time for me. I had even tried to leave to California once and I crashed out and ran out of money and had to come to him. I tried to leave to Vegas once. I almost got trafficked again. That was the first time I almost got trafficked. And he ended up fleeing to Costa Rica after he got arrested because my ex called the cops because he knew each other. They had beef. He was actually from, when I met him, he was actually from Salt Lake and said, cancel your plane ticket. I had run away from my ex at one point, went to go. Someone told me to escort out there, which was like the first time I had done that, other than like when I had posted ads of myself on Craigslist as a really young girl. But I didn't know what I was doing, right? And so I went out. I ended up, basically getting robbed. And I met this dude who was like, I'm from Salt Lake. Cancel your ticket. Let's get married in Vegas. Let's do all this stuff. And he ends up driving this stolen car that I come to find out back to Salt Lake, gets my stuff. We go to stay in my family's condo. And then my ex calls the cops on him and he gets arrested because my ex wants me to come back to him. So that's a totally different story. I don't think I've ever told many people. Well, not
Oh
a lot
my
of people,
gosh.
but, that's crazy. And so,
So
you know,
and meanwhile, the first guy, the one like with all the arms and all of that, he's in jail? Is he still threatening
so
you?
he's in jail,
Okay.
and he bails out and very quickly because he's a
How?
lawyer.
Oh my
He's a
God.
lawyer and he's on an ankle monitor, which he keeps violating to drink. He's like taking it off and like putting alcohol on it or like whatever he's doing to like disable it. I don't know, but like he kept fucking up.
Oh my
Like,
God.
and like they still, like, I'm still in a civil lawsuit with him. And like he got criminally charged, but how many years later? Almost 5 years later, I'm in a civil lawsuit still with him. And because of what happened to me after that, like I'm losing because, like, in the state of Utah, they very much frown upon, anything, sexually
Yeah.
related. And
Uh-huh.
because I was trafficked after that, like, I have a losing case now,
Oh my
because they
gosh.
couldn't get a hold of me for so many years after that, because I had to keep changing numbers. I had to keep getting phones.
You were hiding.
I was hiding. Yeah. So eventually I go into hiding away from my ex. I'm renting. I'm like 45 minutes like out away from him. I'm renting month to month, and I start getting ketamine treatments from the doctor I used to work for, who sells me a dream of safety, him and his wife.
So
I
she
move
was in
in.
on it too.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I move in 24 hours, or so I assume. I move in 24 hours to his house in New Hampshire. And my car and my dog gets driven by a friend at the time, all the way across country. And basically, it didn't take long to realize that in order to live there, I had to exchange services to him, which meant I needed to work for free for him. And I needed to exploit myself sexually for him. So I am going back and forth from New Hampshire, isolated 30-minute drive from the nearest gas station, just me and my dog every day. And then, we end up going to this. He flies me and another girl out to St. Pete's Beach, where we ended up getting assaulted and raped, and a lot of bad stuff happened. I was terrified. She was terrified. We end up going back. The house that I was in flooded while we were on that trip. He sent me back. I'm sleeping in a debris house. My neighbor finds me. It's me and my dog always. And I go to my neighbor's house because it was his summer house and he wasn't using it during the winter. Said, you can use that. Really great guy. And, he's actually my prescribing doctor at this point. So he has me on Ambien, Xanax, Adderall, stocks up a full bar for me. Like, I could have died. And he's withholding meds when I'm not doing what he wants to do, and then over prescribing and making it really dangerous. So I end up getting multiple wellness checks called on me um, by my friends in Boston and, people back home. And one of those wellness checks, I apparently got charged with, well, I got held on a charge for criminal threatening with a deadly weapon against a police officer. I have no recollection of this, right? I go to
Because you're
jail.
medicated.
Yeah, well, no, I was unmedicated at
Oh,
that
you were not
time
medicated.
because he
Okay.
wasn't prescribing my meds to me. And so I went into withdrawal and
Uh,
psychosis, and plus I'm a heavy alcoholic at this point, like heavy. My face is swollen. I'm drinking vodka all day. I have nothing to do. I'm on a lake in the middle of the woods, for fuck's
mhm.
sakes. And so 2 weeks into jail, uh, federal agencies show up. They end up helping me, and then I was thrown in the system. So I went from a detox or a rehab to sober living in Massachusetts, and then I get assaulted by a Lyft driver, and I end up going to a safe house for women who have been exploited and trafficked. And, it for me at the time was too strict. I ended up leaving after 4 months. I got placed in a program in Virginia where I ended up relapsing. My aunt flew out from California, brought me back to Massachusetts where my insurance was. I went through detox again. I went to a halfway house specific for women who had been trafficked. And, like, mind you, I didn't want to get sober any of this time. Like, I had to do it because I had to have a roof over my head, right? So I was a dry drunk. Like, I wanted nothing more but to drink and drug, but I couldn't. And I didn't have the money to, right? Or, like, I couldn't afford to. And so I'm on Tinder just doing all the wrong things. And I meet this guy super, super sexy Jamaican dude with a neck tattoo, like,
Can I?
just, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Like, oh my gosh, there's so so many things. Um, how did the federal agents get you? Like, were they watching this guy, or how?
I don't
Like,
know.
they
I don't
just
know. Well,
okay,
I do think now that I think about it, he did show up to my court case with a bag of medications
okay.
and flew into my court case with a bag of meds trying to get custody of me like Britney Spears.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So, I
Okay.
think that was a red flag for them.
Yeah.
And I think the
Yeah.
jail might have called them at the time.
Okay.
And so I digress. I mean, they show up. I wouldn't talk to them for 2 weeks. I stayed 2 extra weeks in jail because I thought I was in trouble, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I thought this was, my problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was super scared, but and I was still in active psychosis. Like I thought I was pregnant with 50 Cent's baby. I thought like OT Genesis was going to come pick up my dog, who I eventually lost because my family and my trafficker gave her up while I was in jail. I was
Oh
devastated.
no.
I still miss her to this day. She's my best friend. And the logo for my nonprofit is actually, she looks exactly like her. And so that's why I use that logo. She was a German wolf mix. Just very, very precious.
Beautiful. Okay.
But I met this Jamaican dude on Tinder.
Okay.
Very, very, he had all the nice things. And I told him my whole story. And he was like, thank you for being so vulnerable with me, blah, blah, blah. And, became my boyfriend. And so it seemed. And he starts planting little seeds in my head. He's like, you don't have to, you're so beautiful, like you don't have to do this, like you could be a dancer, I know so many clubs I could get you into, yada 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 yada, I can get you an apartment, I can get you, everything that I wanted, but that I didn't have, and I had no means of obtaining, and so I ended up leaving. I ended up becoming a dancer, and then I ended up meeting this guy off of a sugar daddy site because eventually he started pressuring me, saying I'm not making enough money. I'm paying his car payment. I'm paying for the hotels. I'm paying for everything. Like everything's coming out of my pocket. I'm doing all this foul stuff at the club that I didn't know I wasn't supposed to because I've never been a dancer before, right? And for very little money. And I was very unsafe doing that. And I eventually got pressured into getting on an escort site, which he set me all up with. He chose the pictures, he managed it, he was pretty involved, and so I really didn't want to be doing that ever. And I wanted to kind of manipulate him and the system. So I was like, what if I go on sugar daddy sites? Like, I don't have to sleep with them. Like, I don't have to do anything, but I'm getting money. So I meet this guy, tell him my story. He invites me to his house in Marshfield, Massachusetts. And, I ended up, my boyfriend at the time, which is really a Romeo pimp, was what they call them, that pose as a boyfriend and groom you into exploitation. Um, he ends up showing up to that house, that I was staying at, and we get in a little tussle. He backed me into a corner and was screaming at the top of my lungs. At the top of his lungs, really triggered me because of my domestic. I said, look, dude, you better back the fuck up or get slapped the fuck up. And he wouldn't back the fuck up, so he got slapped the fuck up. And, got a bloody nose, all this stuff, called the cops on me. The cops show up. There's me and another girl there in lingerie. And, we tell him he's a pimp, all this stuff. And he has no registration. And the cops arrest him. Arrest me and her. And we go to jail. I have
For
no,
what?
he
For assaulting him?
Yeah,
Oh my
I got a
God.
domestic violence. I got an assault and battery charge that I'm actually still fighting right now. Is that crazy? And they
I
could
mean,
have
it's,
saved me right then. They
yeah.
could have saved me right then from all the rest of the stuff that ended up happening, right then.
It's crazy, but I've heard there are so many stories that are just
Right,
like that where the victim ends up getting abused for defending themselves.
right. I hear
Okay.
it all the time too. I hear it all the time too. But
Ugh.
anyway, so he disappears, and all I have is that person that I met on a sugar daddy website. So I tell him my story. He tells me a dream. I move into the house. It didn't take long for me to not feel well there. I ended up trying to kill myself there, and then I get out of the psych ward, and a week later he kicks me out of the house because he says I'm possessed and calls a priest and rids me of the house, gets all it oiled all down because he's a nut. This dude is a
Mm-hmm.
nut, I tell you. And I have nowhere to go but my ex-boyfriend. Um and so he ends up moving me. We go to Beverly Hills. I become a very high-end dancer in Beverly Hills. And I start noticing some really fishy stuff. He is now, copping up all this weed to like ounces and ounces and ounces of weed he's shipping back. Like his friends are now staying, like it's like a trap house, right? And I'm dancing, I'm paying for everything. He's taking my money now. And like I'm hospitalized because he has me working late shifts, like long shifts at the strip club. And I'm not sleeping. I'm stressed. Have to go to the hospital. Like I was so sleep deprived. They wheeled me into the hospital like this, like, and just pushed me, and they were like, good luck, and like they didn't even pick me up from the like out of the hospital. I had to take an Uber back. um, and so I had threatened to leave him, and quickly, he manipulated me into coming back to Massachusetts, where he had me continue escorting, paying for everything. I'm staying in these super, super sketchy motels. And then I was like, do you not know anyone here that like we could like stay with? You're fucking from here, bro. Like, how do you not know anyone here? And he's like, actually, I do have someone that I wanted to introduce you to. Um, that someone is a gorilla pimp, and hadn't claimed to be anything but that.
Okay,
Wherever the
so what's a
Romeo
gorilla
pimp.
pimp
So a
versus
gorilla
Romeo
pimp,
pimp?
a Romeo pimp is a sweet talker, the one that kind of grooms you and gets you used to the life and acts like your boyfriend, and you even bring them home to your family. They're in your Christmas pictures, like all that stuff. The gorilla pimp, so they take your money by manipulation kind of thing and groom you. A gorilla pimp takes it by force.
Okay.
They're much more volatile and aggressive. So eventually, I end up getting passed off to this dude, this gorilla pimp, and the Romeo pimp disappears, and I'm stuck with this dude. I have no idea, in the hood of Worcester, Massachusetts, which is not a good area. And if anyone knows about, Worcester, it's not good. And he's also Jamaican as well too. So it is a little potential ring. Um, and I didn't talk to this man for 3 fucking days. And then he went into Walmart. One time I went to Walmart, he gave me $100. I went and bought a bunch of air dusters, and I'm in his car going as much as I could. I almost overdosed in his car. And then he came and ripped it out of my hand and said, I don't trust you with money. Like, we need to take care of you. Like, I'm going to handle your money from here on out. Like, I want to make sure you're safe. Like, and that's how he first started taking my money. So now I'm becoming a full-time escort. He is no longer allowing me to dance. He forced me into prostitution, and, he was nice enough to let me pick my own prices, within reason. I had clients that were, I was primarily in New York and Cape Cod, but I worked all over the United States, and like he was very, very good at this. Like he had been doing it for a very long time, 22 or 23 years, I want to say. And he had multiple women at a time. Like at that time, I think I was his only one, because he was older, and like, I think he had kind of like died down a little bit and was, I don't know what happened, but like he was always with me. I was never alone. Even when I had a date, he'd be parked right outside waiting for me, and I'd get in the car and he goes, where's my money? And he's like, are you going to give it to me, or am I going to take it by force? Like, kind of thing. And so I'm terrified, but also I don't know what's happening, because he's saying he loves me. He wants to protect me. Like, I'm very confused and manipulated. And from a young age, I had come to believe that abuse was love. Right. And so I brought that into my life. I had all the red flags and the vulnerabilities of a trafficking victim. I was sexually assaulted as a kid. I grew up in volatility. I had instability. Like, I had been in a domestic. 85% of sex workers had been abused as a kid. 70% had been in a domestic prior. I was mentally ill. I had addiction issues. Like, I fit the ticket for him. And, there was it just got worse and worse over that point. Like, he took me on a road trip back to Utah to like meet my family, to like assure them I was safe, which they knew. Like, my dad told him, he was like, don't even bring that man over to my house, or like, I'm going to bring a shotgun. And so like, they knew what was going on, but I didn't. somehow. Like, I was just so confused until we had gotten back from that trip. And he started putting me in in hotels with no windows, no showers, communal showers. Like, I'm sleeping in the same bed that I had sex with multiple men in, not being able to shower, eating out of vending machines. He also had me, dealing crack at the time as well too, because he was a crack dealer. So not only was I had to be a prostitute, but I had to deal crack cocaine. I had clients that were Vogue models, and then I had clients that were on ankle monitors for homicide investigations. So, yeah.
Terrifying.
hmm Yeah, and they were very aggressive to me. Like, let me just state that. Like, they were very aggressive. Had a lot of very aggressive clients. I was bruised up all the time. Um, and, ultimately, he started trusting me a little bit. And I kind of I realized that what was happening to me at that time, and I knew I had to get out. So I kind of gained his trust until he allowed me to work independently for a couple days at a time. And then he would come back and collect the money and move me to a different location. So I was moving every 24, 72 hours, right? To either a different city or a different state or, somewhere. And I was primarily unmedicated, an unmedicated bipolar 1, PTSD, anxiety, all that stuff. I should have been on meds. And, so I remember, right before I had left him, which he wouldn't let me have more than $5 at a time, by the way, I was making $7,000 to $10,000 a day for him. I calculated, took all the screenshots, everything, of the money transfers and everything. $7,000 to $10,000 a day. He gave me $5 a day, which I would have to argue with him over why I was entitled to that. But anyway, so I was in the Bronx. I was in this horrible rundown hotel that he left me at for days. Um, I heard this woman get beat and raped next to me all night. I was in fetal position in the corner, just so triggered. And I said, this is my last fucking day doing this. I know I have to get out or die trying, and I took the $30 to my Cash App that he didn't know I had. And I called a friend who lives in Jersey and asked him to put me up in an Airbnb. He did. I started working independently. 3 days later, someone broke into my Airbnb and raped me brutally. They had the passcode, and I don't know what happened, but I knew after that I relapsed. I went into a psychosis, where I literally thought I was like a Russian hitman for the mob. I was not well, and then I get jumped in Brooklyn and left naked face down in the streets of Brooklyn by what looked like two Jamaican men. So I think I was set up by my pimp,
I was about to
which he
ask.
claimed to do no matter what if I left. They brought me to the hospital, and I left the life in a hospital gown, and I called my family. No one was coming to get me. I called my pimp. He wouldn't come and get me. So I had no one to call but the guy I met on a sugar daddy site. Who was emailing me and harassing me, was obsessed with me.
Through this whole time. He's
obsessed with me.
even
Obsessed.
though you're possessed.
Yes, he's
Okay.
yes. And so he picks me up. I go back to Massachusetts, and it doesn't take me long to realize he's a psycho. And so I call for a safe bed at the hospital. The cops show up, take me away in an ambulance. I go to the hospital. I'm in the psych ward for a couple days, get released to, I'm still in psychosis, get released to a sober house, which I eventually had to go back to the psych ward for about a month. And then I got released again to another halfway house, and I still didn't feel well. And mind you, I have no documentation at this time. I have no birth certificate. I have no social. I have no ID. I have nothing. Nothing, nothing. And so I was overwhelmed, very suicidal, very homicidal, all the sidles. And I went back to the psych ward, where I also realized that these delusions weren't real. And, I finally came to, found proper medication, went to a halfway house where people were bullying me for my story. I didn't want to be there, so I went back to the dude that I was dealing with. And, we were in separate bedrooms. I had laid my boundaries, said, I don't want to have sex with anyone. I don't want to have a relationship with anyone. Like, I just want to rebuild my life. Of course, I'll help you. Da, da, da. I don't want anything from you. As soon as I started to rebuild my life and make my nonprofit and get my job and talk about moving out and all this stuff, all of a sudden it changed. He became this entirely different person. He wanted to marry me and I said no. And he made it impossible for me to leave. He put everything in his name. He just made my life a living hell. No wonder your family doesn't love you. Like all this stuff. I finally was just done. And I was calling everyone under the sun to allow me to stay with them. I'm calling every shelter. They're all full. And then someone, through an anti-trafficking organization here in Massachusetts called Treasure Life Initiative. They're amazing. One of their founders allowed me to come stay at their house, and we're really good friends now. And I found where I live now. And, I was able to maintain my job throughout it all, but, I'm still rebuilding my life. And it doesn't matter how long you've been out of the situation, whether it's, a month, 6 months, a year. It takes a long time to heal. And it takes forever to heal. And you have to deal with different challenges every single day. But like I said, I never thought I would be a human trafficking, kidnapping, sexual assault, or a domestic violence survivor. It just happened. And I just have to live with it, because life moves on with or without you. And at the end of the day, I want to take my pain and not only turn it into power, but purpose. This is just what I have done in my nonprofit as well too, which we will talk about at a different time. But I think it's really important to talk about the vulnerabilities and why I share the entirety of my story and the details of my personal life, because it's in my childhood, which is not going to make a lot of people in my family happy. But at the same time, people need to know the realities of these things and that people don't choose to have these things happen to you. Probably only about 10% of sex workers are actually doing it by choice. And only 1% make it out and stay out, and less than 1%, people go missing all the time and they never come back. Unfortunately, people die in this. They either die at the hands of others, die at the hands of themselves, or they OD. And that's the reality. But I could go on forever about this topic because it is so dear to my heart. But I've taken my experience and I've, turned it into helping others. It's not an easy journey. Survivors, as you know, can be tough to deal with, including myself. Dealing with myself is tough at times. But I think that what I went through was for a reason. And, for a long time, I didn't realize that purpose and I felt so empty, until I started helping others. And, these survivors that I deal with heal me. And so I feel very grateful that I could come on and spread some awareness about my story. So thank you for that, Ingrid.
Thank you so much, Ali, for coming on. It's, there's just there's so much. There are so many places throughout your life, starting at 3 years old, where one small little intervention would have stopped it.
Yeah.
And you would have gone down a completely different path.
Yep.
And I think by you telling your story, that helps bring awareness, and that hopefully will help somebody recognize, situations like this, and then they can intervene. They can be that person that changes the trajectory of this life. I had no idea 1% get out of sex work. That's what you said?
Yep. Only 1%.
That's crazy to me. That's so scary.
Only 1% make it out. And
that's so scary.
It's just really crazy, but I'm so happy to, spread awareness on this topic today. And I just want to thank you so much for bringing me on today.
I feel like I have to overdo the appreciative feelings I have right now, because that's when it's so vulnerable to go through and tell that story and share that story. But then you're doing it with the purpose of raising awareness and trying to help others. And, you're the source of where people can identify with. And I think when you have people like yourself telling your story and sharing your story, it erases some of the shame that somebody who has gone through even just one piece of what you went through.
Right.
It helps erase their shame of like, okay, this isn't my fault. And none of it is.
None of it is. None of it is. We have these comorbidities in the medical field, they call it, right? We have these comorbidities that make us vulnerable to other tragedies.
Right. And there's no reason to ever apologize for anything that like somebody else did to you.
Right.
This is a life that because of what other people did to you, you were just surviving. I'm trying to survive.
I have been in constant fight or flight until actually like a week ago or this week, until I completely eliminated myself out of the man's life that I met on that site and was completely independent on my own. I was just in a constant state of fight or flight, right? And so at that time, with the fight or flight response, like it took forever for me to calm down up until recently. And like that was just, something that I didn't even realize until after it happened, until like that calmness. And all of a sudden, I felt like I could breathe. Like I felt like what, and like I got this like, how do I explain it? Like I was heavy in my energy for like a long time because I was so heightened for so long. It took me like a week to adjust. Like it was a week ago. Like it was a week ago that I removed myself from him. And like, I've been out of the life almost 9 months. So, like, be patient with yourself. Be patient with your healing. Be patient and be grateful because we fought so hard to see this life. We can't be ungrateful for a life we fought so hard to see. And guess what? We've survived 100% of our worst days. We gotta take our power back. Take our voices back. We have to use our voices to spread awareness. We have to use our resources and our network to make a difference because there aren't a lot of options for people, like us.
Right. And not everyone has the ability to speak out, to share their stories. How did you get your identity? Like you had no documentation. How did you get all of that?
I had to go reapply for everything, and it took forever. I still don't have a license. I get it August 6th because the dude I was dealing with when I moved out of his house withheld my vital documentation, and then I missed my appointment.
Oh my gosh.
That I had waited like months to get. So I had to wait more months to get it.
I mean, like your story gives an opportunity for people to identify with, and like I said, erase some of the shame, but then the resilience that you have, it also gives hope to people of like, my God, Ali, if you can overcome what was it? Like 40 minutes worth of this story. If you can overcome that, no documentation, and then create this independent life, I mean, anybody can do it. And not only are you just surviving for yourself and healing yourself, you're also advocating for others. And that's what we're going to get into in the next episode.
I can't wait.
I know. I'm so thrilled. Before we end this one, and we'll go over in the next episode too, but do you want to give some of your socials and how people can reach you, whatever you want to share?
So my name's Ali Allred. You can find me wearing red on my Facebook, my Instagram, which is tapped ASF, crazy ASF, because I don't care. But also we have pages Survivors to Safety, Survivors to Safety on Instagram and Facebook, and we have a podcast called Pain to Power. Our first episode is called You're Safe Here. It's a wolf logo. So you can find me there.
Okay, great. Well, we will talk again in next week's episode with all the good stuff now.
Yay! Awesome.
Thank you again, Ali, for joining me today and sharing your incredible story. And thank you, warriors, for listening. I've included the link to Ali's 1 in 3 profile, along with other resources she wanted to share in the show notes. So make sure to check those out. Ali and I will be back next week with a follow-up episode in which we will discuss her powerful advocacy work and the podcast she now leads. Until then, stay strong, and wherever you are in your journey, always remember, you are not alone. Find more information, register as a guest, or leave a review by going to the website 1in3podcast.com. That's the number 1, IN, the number 3, podcast.com. Follow 1in3 on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 1in3podcast. To help me out, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. 1in3 is a .5 Pinoy production. Music written and performed by Tim Crow.